Another mastermind hit.
You are now watching Cannabis Live TV. Product reviews by Mastermind. Interviews with licensed professionals. Patient interviews. Exclusive dispensary owner interviews. And don't forget, music by Mastermind. Like and subscribe. Good morning, everybody. It's your boy Mastermind here with 420 Live Ohio. We're back, and today we're getting ready to queue up for the March 25th advisory board meeting. I'm posting the meeting notes on social media so you guys can read along and see what this meeting is about. And I have comments active so you can talk, but it will not show up on the screen until a little bit later into the meeting. So I'm gonna go ahead and switch over to the meeting. Looks like they're already starting to talk. Here we go.
Mr. Cathcart?
I can text him. It looks like his name's on, but maybe he stepped away. I'll shoot him a text maybe.
Will do. Sounds good. Is everything coming in okay, clear for you, Ms. Maerten-Moore?
It is on my side, so hopefully it is on your side as well.
Perfect. That was just my quick check before we get started here.
Okay.
Ms. Maerten-Moore, it looks like the time is 10 o'clock, and I am scanning our list of participants and seeing that I do believe we have everyone who's expected. Are you able to confirm that we can go ahead and start?
Yes, and I did hear back from Mr. Cathcart, and he suggested having all the members turn their cameras on and we can do a check that way.
That would be perfect. All right, thank you. And I do see that recording has started. So, all right, members, committee members, are you able to go ahead and turn on those videos so we can ensure that we do have audio and visual? So we'll go ahead. Good morning, everyone. Today is March 25th, 2021, and this is the meeting of the Medical Marijuana Advisory Committee. It will now come to order. So today's meeting is proceeding virtually through the Microsoft Teams video conferencing. The public has been provided the sign-in information to attend and be able to observe this meeting as well. Because this meeting is virtual, I would ask that members do speak clearly, identify themselves first, and then proceed when I acknowledge them. So also please be advised that this meeting is being recorded. Please be mindful that the staff are taking minutes, so no more than one person should be talking at a time. Also, just want to make sure that everyone does go ahead and mute their microphones if you are not speaking, just so that we are able to clearly hear who is speaking at that time. All right, so today's meeting is coming to order, and I'd like to go ahead and ensure that all the following members are present. Ms. Seidel.
Present.
Ms. Abel.
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Coder. Is Mr. Coder on the line? All right, we'll come back just to make sure. Mr. Hirsch, double checking to see if he is able to attend. All right, Mr. Caseman.
Present.
Thank you. Miss Lawrence, I believe, is out today. Sheriff Treglia.
Is anyone like chatting at me?
Is Sheriff Treglia on?
He's on mute.
He's on mute.
I'm looking at my phone's going again. It's open.
Sheriff Treglia, are you on with us? All right, we'll come back to Sheriff Treglia. Dr. Mitchell, are you present? We believe Dr. Mitchell is not able to join us today. Miss Mosca.
Hello, I'm here.
Present.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Welcome
Dr.
to
Mitchell's
the
here.
audio conferencing center.
Oh,
Please enter
Dr. Mitchell, I hear you.
conference
Are you there?
followed
Yes.
by pound.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Thank you
I'm
very much. All
Sorry.
right, that's all right. Not a problem. Mr. Stanek.
Present.
Thank you. Dr. Wank.
Present.
I do see your video as well. Thank you, Dr. Wank. Dr. Soin.
Present.
Thank you. And is Mr. Kowalski here? Mr. Kowalski? All right, I will circle back. Do we have Mr. Coder on the line? All right. And just another quick check. I do believe that Sheriff Treglia is on the line. We might be having some muting issues and microphone issues. Ms. Maerten-Moore, are we able to have our team reach out to Sheriff Treglia to ensure that we can help him and assist him?
I will reach out to him. Thank you.
That would be fantastic. Thank you very much. All right, there we go. Now I see all the smiling faces. Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. All right. So committee members, I do believe everyone was given a copy of the November 12th, 2020 Advisory Committee minutes as they were written. Was everyone able to review those? And if so, I will entertain a motion to approve those meeting minutes.
This is Marcy Seidel. I so move to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Seidel. I appreciate that. Is there a second on that?
Moscow, second.
Thank you, Ms. Mosca. I appreciate that. All right. Just to accept these meeting minutes, I'll go ahead and move for a vote. Ms. Seidel?
I approve.
Thank you. Miss Abel?
Approve.
Thank you. Mr. Caseman?
Approve.
Thank you. Sheriff Treglia, I don't know if we've been able to, we will go ahead and bypass him. Ms. Mosca?
Yes, approve.
Thank you. Dr. Mitchell?
Approved.
Thank you. Mr. Stanek?
Approve.
Dr. Wank?
Approved.
Thank you. Dr. Soin?
Approve.
Thank you very much. The minutes are moved on to the records. I appreciate that. So at this time, I'm going to just take a moment here. I do believe we are trying to ensure that our newest committee member does have a video and audio. Sheriff Treglia. Well, while we are working through his audio and visual, we will go ahead and I just want to make sure that everyone is aware that we do have a new member with us. Taking this opportunity to introduce Sheriff Matthew Treglia. He has been appointed by the President of the Senate as the committee's local law enforcement representative. So when we do have a moment, we will go ahead and have him introduce himself. While we wait for that, we're going to go ahead and just provide some program updates for everyone as well. I will pause there. Ms. Maerten-Moore, any update from Sheriff Treglia?
Yes, he is going to join us by phone. So if we just give him a couple of minutes, I provided him with the phone number and the login entry. So he will be joining us momentarily.
Perfect. So while we wait for him to join, just a few program updates for everyone. There are some committee business to address for everyone, the public as well as our committee members. So the next advisory committee meeting is scheduled to meet in June of 2021, and again, it will be held virtually with our Microsoft Teams application. All the information will be posted on the Medical Marijuana Advisory Committee webpage once all the details have been finalized. Committee members, please make sure that you are providing those good dates back to the email and making sure that you do respond, just so that we can ensure that we do have a quorum. All right, next, I want to make sure that everyone is reminded of the committee ground rules that we have here. So although this is a public meeting, the committee will not be accepting any testimony or public comments during this meeting. So to ensure that everyone is staying up to date with any program announcements, I do encourage everybody to sign up for those email updates on the medical marijuana homepage at medicalmarijuana.ohio.gov. I'm going to flip back. Has Sheriff Treglia, has he been able to join?
Yes, I have. I'm listening.
Wonderful. Welcome, Sheriff. We're happy to have you on. I did just have a brief introduction for you. Just wanted to introduce you to the committee and wanted to thank you for joining the committee and being appointed. Would you like to take a moment just to introduce yourself to the committee?
Sure. My name's Matt Treglia. I'm the Sheriff of Allen County. I've worked in this office for approximately now 25 years, and I'm going into my second term as sheriff currently. At the office, I've worked in several different areas as far as road patrol and SWAT, and I actually worked as an undercover narcotics officer for 4 years, and then I ran the actual undercover narcotics division, which was multi-county, multi-agency for approximately 5 years. And pretty much my background has been all in law enforcement.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Sheriff. We appreciate your time here with us today and your service on the committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Doesn't sound like he has
All right, moving on to our
medical
program
cannabis
updates. So with us today, we have representatives from all 3 state agencies that are responsible for the medical marijuana control program. So I'm going to turn things over to our program team, and I do ask that committee members do hold off on any questions until each of the state agencies have completed and had the opportunity to present the information, and then we'll take questions at the end of the presentations, each individual presentation, I should say. So at this time, I do believe I'm turning it over to Ms. Maerten-Moore.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. As per normal, I will start out with an update on our patient and caregiver registry numbers. This data is valid through the end of February. So as you can see, these are all historical numbers. So we have had 244,163 total patient recommendations. And just a reminder, you'll see that's a much larger number than the actual number of patients who have registered, which is 176,387. And that is because a patient could have multiple recommendations. So for example, a patient who has received a recommendation and they've been in the program for a year, they would go back to their doctor and they would get another recommendation. We also have situations where a physician may make a 90-day recommendation and then have the patient return and get another recommendation. So the recommendations will always exceed the number of registered patients. And so we've had 176,387 patients register throughout the program's history. Of those patients, 155,961 have made at least one medical marijuana purchase. So you can see most patients have gone out and actually made at least a single purchase. The other number that we promised the committee we would start recording, and we have, is the number of patients who have both an active recommendation and an active registration. So that is the number of patients who could walk into a dispensary today and actually make a purchase. And that number as of the end of February was 92,772. And I'm going to put an asterisk by that number because we think it's actually higher than that. We know it's actually higher than that. But because of the legislative extension on licensing, patients who have had their license expire over the past year have received an automatic extension until July 1st. So we do have a number of patients who are eligible to walk in and purchase at a dispensary. However, if you were to actually look at their card, it would show an expired date. So those patients are not included in that 92,772 number. So once we hit July 1st and all of those patients will hopefully have renewed in June or will renew in July, we expect our July number to catch up and be accurate as to the exact number of patients that can walk into a dispensary and purchase. This is another number I report every month. The number of patients by age group. You can see we have very, very few, significantly less than 1% of our patients are minors under the age of 18. Other than that, our patient population is fairly spread out over the different age groups. So you could walk into a dispensary and see just about anyone of any age purchasing medical marijuana. We also regularly report the number of patients by condition. As you can see, pain is always our largest group of patients, probably because it does affect so many different other conditions. And just a reminder that patients can have a diagnosis of multiple conditions. So we do have patients, for example, who have a diagnosis of both chronic pain and fibromyalgia. So they are counted in each of those total numbers based on their condition. The other thing I want to point out is that we have added numbers for cachexia. As the advisory committee may recall, that was a new condition that was approved by the medical board just last year. So we have started obtaining total number of patients. It's not a huge number. My understanding is that is often, again, something that is coexistent with maybe another condition. It also may be a situation where physicians are not fully aware that they can diagnose or recommend a patient for cachexia, and they're just starting to add that on. Dispensary update, nothing has changed since the last meeting. We are still at 52 open dispensaries that have certificates of operation, and we have 5 provisional licenses that are outstanding. So those are 5 dispensaries that are working to get up and operational. Our employee counts, I think when I was updating this slide, we went up by about 100 employees. This number generally stays fairly stable until we have those additional 5 dispensaries, and then obviously that will increase the employee totals on the pharmacy licensing side of the program. Patient communications. There's been two significant changes since the last time that we met. One is we have started a patient and caregiver newsletter. We have historically had a newsletter that we provide to dispensaries on a regular basis to give them updates in the program, to address issues that the board has been seeing on a regular basis. We will reach out to Commerce and Medical Board if they ever have something that they feel they need communicated to the dispensaries. And similarly, Commerce has a newsletter for their licensees. The medical board has a newsletter for their CTR physicians. So we decided that it was time to start a patient and caregiver newsletter. And this allows us to have that same communication with patients. If we want, we are seeing a lot of questions coming in about a specific item, or for example, the extension of the registration, which you will see in this newsletter, things that we need patients to be aware of. We have done email blasts in the past to provide them with information such as the registration extension, but this gives us a venue to provide a little bit more detail, to do it on a little bit more of a consistent basis, and just to remind patients of issues in the program that may come up. Reminder to update their address if they move, or their phone number if they have a new phone number, those kinds of things. The other big change has been to our helpline. The board, or I should say the MMCP, this is actually a hotline for all components of the program. We have had a helpline since the very beginning. This was mandated in the legislation. And the purpose of that is to respond to any inquiries. They're mostly from patients, but we do get calls from CTR physicians and occasionally from a dispensary or a processor or a cultivator, and also to take in any adverse event reports that the board receives as a result of using medical marijuana. So on March 1st, we actually migrated our helpline from an outside vendor to the Department of Administrative Services. So it is an internal state-run helpline now. In the course of doing this, a lot of time and effort went into updating all of the responses. These were originally created when the program was started, so we were able to remove some of the responses that were we were no longer getting questions about, and to update things, just clean everything up. We updated our adverse event reporting form, and so far the transition has gone very well. I think from a patient standpoint, they probably don't even know that the hotline moved. Our number is the same, so patients are still calling the exact same phone number and hopefully getting the same quality information. This does allow us to have sort of almost real-time communication with the Department of Administrative Services, because we are essentially on the same platform with them. The next item I have to discuss is petitions for new forms and methods of administration. Oh, sorry, that's my slide. I was trying to mute someone and I lost it, so go forward here. So we have several, I'll get to the slide in just a second, but we have new petitions for new forms and methods. So as the committee is hopefully aware, the only products that can be sold at a dispensary are those that have been approved by the Board of Pharmacy. And the medical board, I know they will talk to you a little bit about adding new conditions. For adding new forms and methods, we do it a little differently. There is no set time frame when parties can submit a petition. They can submit it at any time as long as they meet the requisite criteria, and the board will go ahead and evaluate those petitions as they come in. So in the past, I believe only one petition has gone all the way to the board, and that was for a nasal administration of medical marijuana. And ultimately, that new form or method was rejected by the board due to some safety concerns. We have received other petitions over the years, but they either have not met the requisite criteria to go to the board, which I'll get into in just a minute, or they were for something that was clearly outside the rules. So for example, we've received petitions to allow smoking medical marijuana. And as we all know, the legislature did not allow smoking as a form or method. So that would be automatically rejected, essentially, because the board doesn't have the authority to authorize that. So in order for the board to review a petition, It must include scientific evidence that is capable of being reproduced by multiple scientific experts, an opinion of support from at least one scientific expert, and that scientific expert must have specialized knowledge acquired through experience, education, or observation or study that is not possessed by the average layperson. The petition must address the extent to which the proposed form or method is generally accepted by the medical community, any information or studies regarding any benefits or adverse effects, and specifically explain to the board what the benefits would be to patients of approving the proposed form or method. So once we receive those petitions, then the board has the authority to go out and conduct its own examination. It can look for any additional scientific, medical, other evidence. It can ask for expert opinions, either in person or in writing, from anyone who is knowledgeable about that form. And it can consider essentially any information that it feels is necessary to make a determination as to whether that new form or method should be approved. And then once that sort of research and investigation is completed, then it would go to the board, and a majority must concur in the decision to either approve or deny the proposed form or method. So we have received 3 petitions for new forms and methods of administration. We received one in December and then the other 2 earlier this year. So the first one is a petition for an edible for buccal or sublingual administration. So as I'm sure the committee is aware, we do have edible products that are available for purchase at dispensaries. But the difference between an edible and the buccal or the sublingual administration would be that the new proposed methods would be absorption through the mouth rather than through the stomach, through eating it. So it would be a quicker absorption into the patient's bloodstream rather than edibles, which can sometimes take a few hours to take effect in a patient. So some of the proposed or suggested methods for buccal or sublingual administration that were contained in the petition were for strips, sprays, oral salves, tablets, and pouches. And this would primarily be geared towards patients who either can't keep food down or cannot ingest large amounts of sugar that would be likely contained in an edible, and either they can't or they don't want to vape plant material. So this would give them another option. The second petition is for vaginal and rectal suppositories. And all this information I'm quoting is from the actual petitions. So their argument is that this would cut back on stomach issues that some patients have when they ingest medications. It would be a good form or method for patients who have impaired swallowing and decreased responsiveness. It would be something that could be administered to the patient. It would also be for patients who have maybe colon or cervical cancer, where it could be administered directly at the site of the disease, as well as for females with chronic pain due to endometriosis or polycystic ovary syndrome or something similar to that. And then the last form or method that has been proposed is for an aerosol inhaler. And this would be very similar to something that a patient who has asthma would take. So rather than having to vape, a patient could use this inhaler. It would be a little more medicinal looking for patients who are concerned maybe about the appearance of using some type of a vape device. So that's just a quick summary of the 3 proposals. These have all been submitted or presented to the board for at least an initial review. And the board has approved sending these to Bridget Protis, who has very kindly volunteered to take a look at these and to spearhead the board's efforts in researching and finding more support either for or against the approval of these. Ms. Protis is a pharmacist. She works in the hospice care industry, so that's particularly helpful given the nature of some of these proposals. And she is also the chairperson of our Health Claims Committee. So she will do a review and potentially bring in the Health Claims Committee to also weigh in on that. So we're still at I would say, the fairly early on stages of conducting these investigations. But over the next few months, we hope to have more scientific studies, more information. I will note, because there's a limited amount of medical marijuana studies, it makes things a little more difficult. So she's not only looking at medical marijuana studies, but where available, she's also looking at other just general pharmaceutical studies involving these types of forms and methods of administration. Next topic I have is probably the sort of hot button issue. I know we get a lot of questions regarding where the board is on this. So I will touch on our request for applications for new dispensaries status and process a little bit. So pursuant to our rules, each biennial licensing term, the Board of Pharmacy must determine whether there are a sufficient number of medical marijuana dispensaries. And in making this determination, the state is required to, or the board is required to look at the population of the state, the number of patients seeking to use medical marijuana, and the geographic distribution of dispensary sites to ensure patient access to medical marijuana. So as to the population of the state, that probably has not changed too much since the last time that dispensaries were being considered. We do know that the population of patients is higher than what the board anticipated it would be. And we do know from conducting our surveys, from patient input, from looking at numbers, that we do have some patients who are traveling long distances to get to dispensaries. So the board is really focusing on, do we have enough dispensaries to meet patient needs, and do we have enough locations so that patients have medical marijuana available to them? They're not having to drive for 2 hours, and that's not impeding them from being able to use medical marijuana. So the other factor that I touched on a little bit in the medical board, I know in their presentation we'll touch on this, is the qualifying conditions. And we know that there are some petitions pending both in front of the medical board and in front of the legislature to expand what the qualifying conditions are. So if a qualifying condition were approved, oh, I think I lost my slideshow. If a new qualifying condition is approved that were to result in a large influx of patients, as we saw with cachexia, that didn't really increase the patient numbers very much, but some of these proposed conditions could cause a significant increase. So that is something else that we are looking at in terms of the number of dispensaries. So as of right now, as I indicated to you last time, the board has been doing a lot of internal review on this. We've also been doing a lot of internal review on the process. So I will pause for a second here. So we've also been doing a lot of internal work on the process, and part of this has been with our rules, which we have over the last year had various rules presented to the board on various schedules. And one of the rules that was presented had to do with dispensaries and particularly with the applications. So on March 12th, we did have a public hearing on some of our dispensary rules. Some of these, there were not a lot of changes to the rules, but probably the ones that got the most focus had to do with our application process to operate medical marijuana dispensaries and our evaluation process. And one of the big changes that the board approved at, I believe it's last meeting, had to do with the language as far as how the scoring of dispensary applications would take place. And specifically, under the current version of the rule, it states that the board will award licenses based on a competitive scoring basis. And the board approved adding some language into it that would also allow a lottery or some combination of competitive scoring and a lottery. And the reason we added this language is because the board staff has done a great deal of research, talked to a lot of other states as to what processes they have used in awarding new dispensary licenses, and we've gotten a lot of really great feedback. And most of the feedback has been consistent, that using a lottery system has been a much quicker, much easier, much fairer process. And so we have looked at incorporating some lessons learned from other states into our own process. So from an applicant standpoint, what we are looking at is a potential scoring system where the applicants would follow the exact same stringent application process. The application rule, which is 6202, has remained virtually the same. So a dispensary applicant would still need to know exactly where they're going to be located. They would still need to ensure that they are the correct distance from a prohibited facility. They would need to follow the very high security standards, very high patient care standards. From their side of things, things would look very, very the same, very similar. From the board side, it would allow a little bit of a streamlined process, so that if an applicant can meet those stringent requirements, they would be part of the lottery and they could be selected to receive a provisional dispensary license. But I can't stress enough that no one would receive a provisional dispensary license unless they were qualified to get that dispensary up and running and to actually receive a certificate of operation. So what we're trying to do is streamline the process a little bit, be able to award these licenses much more quickly without losing the high standards that the board has set for its licensees. So that is just a general overview of the system that we would have. And again, I want to stress that this has not gone to the board yet. The board has not approved any actual numbers or any process yet. We are still working this through, but as part of working this through, we are trying to get this legislation through as well. So it has gone to a public hearing, and we will go ahead and proceed through the rule process on those rules. And then the last item I have on my discussion checklist is change of ownership applications. This is not new per se, but we've been seeing this a lot more over the last several months. So under our rules, a dispensary must be operating for 12 months before it can change ownership. And most of our dispensaries have hit that 12-month period. So some of them have been pursuing ownership changes. We sort of lump these into two categories. We call them sort of a complete change of ownership, where a company is either buying all the stock of an existing dispensary or they are buying all of the assets. And so effectively, the dispensary is owned by a whole new entity. Its name may or may not change. And then the other category is smaller changes of ownership. We may have a situation where there's 3 owners and 2 of them decide to buy out the 3rd owner. So those owners are staying the same, they're just changing their percentage of stock. So those are 2 of the most common situations that would occur. Those changes of ownership need to be approved by the board. They file a very, very long application. It is reviewed by several different divisions within the board. So our attorney will review all of the change of ownership documents, all the agreements between the company. We will ensure that they are not violating any of the license limits, either across the state or within the district where they are looking for a change of ownership. And our licensing section will ensure that everyone is licensed who needs to be. They will conduct all the background checks. They will do tax checks. And then it will go to our compliance team, and they will make sure that the dispensary is completely in compliance. And all of this is reviewed before any of these change of ownership applications are approved. So I believe to date we've had, I think, 9 complete change of ownerships since last May, maybe, was when the first one was filed. But these are something that we anticipate we will continue to see. The longer dispensaries are open, probably the more these will be happening for the board. And that is the conclusion of my presentation. So I am open to, I guess, questions from the advisory committee members.
Absolutely.
Hi there, this is Gary Wink. Can I go first?
Sure, Mr. Wink. Right before you ask
Yeah,
your
go ahead.
question, I just want to acknowledge that Mr. Kowalski has joined the meeting. I want to make sure that we put that on the record. Mr. Kowalski, are you able to just verbally acknowledge that you've joined?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Excellent. All right. Dr. Wink, please proceed.
Hi there. You mentioned that there was going to be a hospice pharmacist who was going to be looking at the methods of administration, and I just wanted to reach out, or allow you to ask you to reach out on my behalf and ask her if she needs any assistance or would like some, feedback from the members of the board, me in particular. The factors she's looking at, for administration issues are topics that I usually pay attention to. So, if I can be of any assistance, I'd certainly love to play a role or provide any input. So if you could just reach out on my behalf.
That is very helpful. I will let her know. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you so much. Any other questions?
This is Jason Caseman. I have a question.
Please proceed, Mr. Caseman.
Thank you. So with us, with the board looking at a process for awarding additional licenses, I'm wondering what's going on, if you could speak to what's going on with the 5 provisional licenses that are still out, and do we believe that they're getting close to operation?
We do believe they are getting close to operation. So 2 of those licenses were awarded later on in the process as a result of litigation. So they did not, it's not that they've been trying to get up and running this entire time, it's that they did not receive their provisional dispensary license until later. And then the other 3 are all part of the same company. And there was also some litigation involved in that slowed things down a little. They were awarded as part of the original licensing process. However, we've run into some, legal roadblocks along the way, so to speak. So we are optimistic that those have all been resolved and that those 5 dispensaries will hopefully be up and running. I'd like to say before our next MMAC meeting, but obviously it's the timeline is more on their end than on the board's end.
Thank you.
Anyone else, committee members? Any other questions? All right, I'm hearing none. Thank you, Ms. Maerten-Moore. We appreciate the report and the updates today. All right, we are going to turn it over to Mr. McIlvaine from our Department of Commerce. And are we able to get the slides back up to ensure that everyone is able to see them?
I have them up on mine. Are you able to see them?
I'm seeing some head nods. I am not, but I'm okay. I have our slide deck up over here, so.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you, advisory committee members and program stakeholders for joining us again today to discuss our updates. In terms of commerce licensees, we are now up to 27 cultivators growing medical marijuana, 30 processors manufacturing products, and 3 operating testing labs in the state. We do expect a few additional processors to receive their final inspections and certificates of operation in the coming months. We also continue to see an increase in the number of employees at commerce licensees, including a total of 2,830 active employee badges as more facilities staff up after receiving their certificate of operation. This represents a 23% increase in commerce active employee badges since our advisory committee meeting last November. Patient purchases of medical marijuana continue to significantly increase, including a total of 338 million in total program sales. Right now, we continue to see around 5.5 million in product sales per week. Notably, as patient demand increases in sales, the average cost of both plant material and manufactured product has remained pretty stable over the past several months. Specifically, the average cost of plant material remains just around $30 per 1/10 of an ounce. And as you can see in the graph, the average cost of a manufactured product also has stabilized to just under $43 per unit as more processors become operational. Overall, since the beginning when these products were available, plant material has decreased by 38% and manufactured products have decreased by 50%, 57% over that time. In terms of key commerce initiatives, the department recently completed its review and issued a new provisional testing lab license to One Bond Laboratories in Columbus. The MMCP team continues to review the remaining testing lab applications, and qualified labs will be awarded a provisional license on a rolling basis. It's important that the program has a sufficient number of testing labs to meet an increase in both patient demand and operating licensees. The Commerce team also continues to develop its second rule update, focusing on packaging and labeling requirements, which will include a proposed standardized product label to provide consistency in labeling and improve patient awareness of the products they are purchasing. In addition, Commerce recently implemented electronic background checks to streamline the licensee employee ID badge process and continues to review and approve several licensee ownership interest change requests. The MMCP program has also developed a strong financial position over the past couple years and will provide its first repayment of its controlling board emergency loans this fiscal year. Specifically, the program will make 3 equal installments of $2.87 million in fiscal years 2021, 22, and 23 to repay the full $8.6 million in emergency funds. So thank you again for joining. Happy to answer any questions regarding commerce initiatives.
Thank you, Mr. McIlvaine. Committee members, any questions? Ms. Mosca, I see you raising your hand, please.
Hi, the labs, since there are so few labs, are there geographical spread out of those 7 that are applying?
Yes, we have. There are a couple in Columbus. We have one in Akron, Toledo, and Youngstown. So we do have kind of a geographic representation of those that are applied. Now they still have to go through the application process to be minimally qualified. But currently, we have North Coast Labs in the Northeast region, ACT Labs in Toledo, and then Hocking College, kind of in the Southeast region. But these additional labs, yes, and in addition to providing more testing capacity, I think they'll provide a more regional access as well for our licensees.
Thank you.
Sure.
Committee members, any additional questions? All right, I'm seeing some head nods of no. Thank you, Mr. McIlvaine. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for the update. All right, next we are going to go ahead and turn it over to the medical board with Ms. Dorcy, who is a new face presenting today.
Good morning. Thank you guys so much for having me. I am a newer face to this committee meeting. I started with the medical board back in December. So just to provide a couple of updates from the 2 areas that the medical board primarily functions in within this program. First, we are going to give pending petitions that were submitted during the 2020 submission period. That period opened on November 1st and closed on December 31st, 2020. During that petition period, all petitions which were received by a number of individuals, consumers, physicians, associations, any petition that we received must include all of the 7 different areas which are listed under the Ohio Administrative Code. We received 30 petitions during the submission period. These are the 6 conditions which are moving forward for consideration. A couple of them had multiple petitions. So currently the board has sought a subject matter expert to review for Huntington's disease, restless leg syndrome, spasticity and spasms, and terminal illness. The board actually did approve a medical expert to review all of these petitions. The medical expert has a background in neurology and also works in palliative care and is a CTR prescriber. So we thought that it was a good background mix to be able to give a good, robust review of all these petitions. As for autism and panic disorder with agoraphobia, these are conditions which had been petitioned in the past, and there was some new scientific evidence that was submitted with these. And based on that past review, our committee has decided to act as their own expert for these. There was a lot of past discussion and a lot of knowledge base there within our committee members that they felt they could go ahead and make a decision based off the information provided. Additionally, there was public comment that was accepted in the month of February. Any comments that had any additional information and scientific evidence that could have been useful for review was also provided to the committee members doing review for autism and panic disorder, as well as the subject matter expert for the other conditions. So the petition period, since it's still ongoing, we have put all of those petitions up on our website. Anybody can go onto the website and review each one of those petitions, as well as petitions which were submitted in previous years. Those are all available on the website. So these are the list of petitions which were voted to be rejected by our committee. Those will be going to a full board vote at the next committee meeting, or at the next board meeting in April. And this is a list of all of those. Those petitions are a mix of category 1. So what we had done at the medical board was, as we received these conditions, we created our categories to put these in, just buckets to drop them in, so that way it's easy for them to be sorted for our committee to review. So category 1 would be petitions that did not meet that requirement under the administrative code, which was provided earlier. There was another category which placed petitions that maybe were almost there, maybe had most of the elements but needed one final thing. We didn't put any petitions in that category this year because board staff, we reached out to those petitioners ahead of time to make sure that we could get all that information from them. And then also category 3 were petitions for conditions which were already covered. So there were some that had come through which were very clearly already covered. And then there was a couple that our committee members voted to move over into could be covered under other conditions. So we have migraines is one that our board committee felt that chronic migraines could be covered under chronic pain. So information on those petitions which could already be covered, that will be put on our website as well for everyone to be able to view. So the next steps, our committee, as I mentioned, is currently reviewing autism and panic disorder with agoraphobia, and so they're continuing to look through information on those petitions. And our expert has all the information in order to make a decision and give a determination on a recommendation for the other conditions. So our full board will review all that, our committee will review that, and we will be looking for a final decision sometime this summer. So the list of qualifying conditions is listed also on our website. A new condition added last year was cachexia. So that is updated on our website. Our website will continue to be updated if any other new conditions will be added. So the next program area that the medical board oversees in this program is the CTR physicians. So currently we have 681 physicians with an active CTR. That's of March, beginning of the month. There are 297 locations on this search map. The search map is a primary feature for patients locating physicians with a CTR, and each physician that can make recommendations is providing their information to us so we can put this on the map. There are some locations which can be filtered by city or filtered by county, so that way it's easily accessible. So the CTR physician survey is something that we provide to CTR physicians in order to obtain information regarding the efficacy of medical marijuana for the conditions in which the physician makes the recommendation. This is in the Ohio Revised Code as a requirement for CTR physicians. So we will be distributing that survey out to the CTR physicians here and in the coming weeks, and then we'll prepare our annual report this summer. Annual reports are available on the website for anybody to view. We did recently make a website update. If you go to our website, we actually have a tab, a medical marijuana tab, and then under that tab, we've added a number of resources for consumers as well as licensees. And I would encourage anybody who has any questions or is looking for any other information to check out our website. There's some really good updates on there. There's also COVID-19 updates on the website. So the medical boards continue to allow providers to use telemedicine in place of in-person visits without enforcement. But the providers must document their use of telemedicine and meet the minimum standards of care as outlined in the administrative code. There's no changes anticipated at this time, but we understand there's going to be a need for telehealth in the future, and the board is going to continue to review and discuss the impact that pandemic has had on the practice of medicine, and any changes that are that will be made to those allowances. We'll have plenty of notice. We will make sure to put those on the website. We'll make sure that they show up in newsletters. We'll make sure that they're communicated. And so those telemedicine visits are permitted for initial visits and for renewing recommendations. That is the update for now. If there's any questions, if anybody would like to go ahead, I can take those.
Hi there, Brandy, or Ms. Dorcy. This is Gary Wank again. I have two questions, please. When you were discussing the approval of various conditions, I'm curious, how does our state, the state of Ohio, compare with other states? There are so many now where it's useful information for comparison. In terms of the rate of approval, the numbers of requests that are coming in, are we approving more or less than other states? And related to that, does the state medical board take that into account? If a number of other states decided that autism was going to be approved, would that influence the decision?
So I'll go ahead and take the second part of that question first. As far as the decisions that are made by committee members on whether a new condition is going to be allowed, our committee members are looking at scientific evidence and making a recommendation based on scientific evidence. So as far as like what other states are doing, our committee is looking strictly at the science. And so I don't believe that there's any consideration when they're reviewing a specific petition on other states and what those states are doing. It's mainly what kind of scientific evidence is there. And if there's a lot of scientific evidence and other states have approved it, they're likely seeing the same scientific evidence that some of these other states have seen. So they are doing a robust review based on the information provided. As far as you had asked the first question about number of states and different programs. You're right. There are a number of different programs around the country. We have had some communication with some who are, seeking out kind of programs on what our regulations are here in Ohio, what those recommendations are in the administrative code that we need to follow, and focusing there.
Okay, thank you. I have a second question, unrelated. You mentioned the number of physicians in the state of Ohio, and I brought this question up actually a few years ago, and it just occurred to me I'd check again. When we first started the program, there was a preponderance of DOs over MDs because a lot of the businesses that MDs were part of were discouraging their physicians. Have you seen that trend continue, or are we seeing sort of a fair representation of who's getting the CTRs, both MDs and DOs, since the state has far more MDs than DOs registered?
That's a really good question that I'm actually interested in now too. I'm curious of what how many DOs we have in comparison physicians, as well as what does that look like as the overall, how many overall MDs do we license versus DOs, and what percentage of them each are CTR prescribers. But we can run a report and we can provide that information at the next meeting.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other committee members have questions for Ms. Dorcy?
I have a question, Madam Chairwoman.
Yes, I believe that is Mr. Stanek.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right.
Good morning, Ms. Dorsey. Welcome.
Good morning.
Question in regard to the physician survey. Do we know at this point how detailed that will be? For example, in regard to, say, glaucoma, will the report, I'm sure it will indicate the efficacy in regard to that or any of the particular applications, but will it go into detail relative to particular strains and how impactful or less impactful they might be?
So traditionally, I mean, this is only the second year, I believe, we've done this survey. So the questions last year, we actually just had a meeting yesterday and reviewed the questions, and we're looking at, getting this next set sent out. The questions are strictly just how do you feel that medical marijuana has been helping your patients in the condition? And it's really just a, very helpful, not helpful at all, somewhat helpful. I mean, it doesn't go into a lot of great details, but we can encourage comments, and we can create a comment section that allows for those prescribers to provide additional information about what they're seeing with treating for each specific condition that they're treating. We can add a comment box there, so that way they can add that type of information as well, if that's some information that people are looking for.
Okay. Yeah, and I know we don't want to be too onerous in what we're requesting of the physicians.
Sure.
At the same time, it seems like an opportunity to potentially start to get some research information.
Yes, I agree. And when we met yesterday to talk about the survey and the questions, a lot of the discussion we had about information that we can gather from these surveys was questions that were commonly asked by physicians, things that we've seen in our email inbox from patients, things that we've seen come over from Greg and Sharon from the Commerce and Pharmacy Board side of things. So we're really trying to do a good look at this survey and see how it can really not only provide the information asked in the administrative code, but help to improve the program as a whole.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Ms. Dorsey, I do have one question just regarding the telehealth and the visits. Have you seen a large percentage of these visits being conducted by our physicians? And what is the medical board's view on continuing the telehealth visits after the COVID-19 pandemic may be coming to a wrap here, crossing our fingers, and whether or not that's something that could be continued?
Sure. So I don't know numbers specifically. We haven't asked anybody to report back, numbers of what we're seeing. But there's a lot of talk. There's constant updates on, what's going on in the world of medicine and what's going on with the pandemic. And so I know that there has been some updates provided, and there's been some discussion. There hasn't been any decision, But like I mentioned earlier, I think there's definitely there's an understanding that there is a need for telemedicine, but as far as what that looks like for a doctor-patient relationship, that's something our board will continue to review, because the focus still needs to be on the good practice of medicine and where this would be best applicable. So the board really wants to make sure that they're weighing all the options and they're looking at everything. So I think we'll see some decisions here to come in the future, but there's nothing right now.
Definitely makes sense. Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Any other committee members have any questions? I will open it up if you have any questions for Ms. Maerten-Moore or Mr. McIlvaine. Hopefully he didn't run, just to make sure that we are getting everyone's questions answered if the following presentation spurred up additional questions or comments. I'm hearing none. We've got a quiet committee today. Ms. Maerten-Moore, are there any other additional items? I do believe that at this time we have addressed our agenda. Is that correct?
I do not believe so. We will likely just send out another Survey Monkey regarding dates for the next committee meeting. So just keep an eye out for that in the next couple months. We'll get something else set. That's it.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. At this time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn this committee meeting.
Marcy Seidel, I so move.
Thank you, Ms. Seidel. Is there a second for adjournment of the meeting?
Second by Mike Stanek.
Thank you, Mr. Stanek. I appreciate it. And just for a roll call to make sure that we have everyone's voices heard, Ms. Seidel?
I approve.
Thank you. Ms. Abel?
Here, approve.
Excellent.
Whatever
Thank
you need. Sorry.
Mr. Caseman?
Approve.
Mr. Treglia, or excuse me, Sheriff Treglia, apologize.
Approve.
Thank you. Dr. Mitchell?
Uh-oh.
I think I heard a approval. Ms. Mosca?
Approve.
Mr. Stanek?
Yes.
Dr. Wenk?
Approved.
Dr. Soin? We will come back. Mr. Kowalski?
Approve.
Thank you very much. Is Dr. Soin still on the line? I'm going to assume that I'm going to have a positive for the motion to adjourn. Everyone, thank you so much. I appreciate everyone's attendance, and the ability to mute microphones has been solved this meeting, so I appreciate everyone allowing to have committee members being heard today. Thank you so much. We'll see you guys everyone in June.
Thank you.
Thanks.